Your spirit may fly away, and your body may be broken. Your lips, they may not speak, for some things cannot be spoken. But time will not forget about the price you had to pay for the greed of men who did not respect the woman, the Congolese woman, oh the woman. They hurt your body and your mind, and they take away your land. They take away your jobs, put guns in your enemies' hands. How many more must die before the whole world pays for the telling of the lies, the killings and the rape of the woman, the Congolese woman? You dry your eyes and you keep it going. Pull yourself up with your own strong hand, strong and ever reaching for the sky. That is a woman. Your spirit may fly away, and your body may be broken. Your lips, they may not speak, for some things cannot be spoken. But time will not forget about the price you had to pay for the greed of men who did not respect the woman, oh, the Congolese woman, the woman, oh, the woman.
Je m'appelle Denis Mukwege. Je viens d'un pays le plus riche de la planète. Pourtant, le peuple de mon pays est parmi les plus pauvres du monde. La réalité troublante est que l'abondance de nos ressources naturelles, or, coltan, cobalt et d'autres minéraux stratégiques alimentent la guerre, source de la violence extrême et de la pauvreté abjecte en République démocratique du Congo. Le peuple congolais est humilié, maltraité, massacré depuis plus de 2 décennies au vu et au su de la communauté internationale. Aujourd'hui, grâce aux nouvelles technologies d'information et de la communication, plus personne ne peut dire « je ne savais pas ». Avec ces prix Nobel de la paix, j'appelle le monde à être témoin et je vous exhorte à vous joindre à nous pour mettre fin à cette souffrance qui fait honte à notre humanité commune. Les habitants de mon pays ont désespérément besoin de la paix. Mais comment construire la paix sur des fausses communes? Comment construire la paix sans vérité ni réconciliation? Comment construire la paix sans justice ni réparation? Au moment où je vous parle, un rapport est en train de moisir dans les tiroirs d'un bureau à New York. Il a été rédigé à l'issue d'une enquête professionnelle et rigoureuse sur les crimes de guerre et les violations des droits humains perpétrés au Congo. Cette enquête nomme explicitement des victimes, des lieux, des dates, mais élude les auteurs. Ces rapports du projet Mapping, établi par le Haut Commissariat des Nations Unies aux droits humains, décrit pas moins de 617 crimes de guerre et crimes contre l'humanité, et peut-être même des crimes de génocide. Qu'attend le monde pour qu'il soit pris en compte? Il n'y a pas de paix durable sans justice. Or, la justice ne se négocie pas. Ayons le courage de jeter un regard critique et impartial sur les événements qui sévissent depuis trop longtemps dans la région des Grands Lacs. Ayons le courage de révéler le nom des auteurs des crimes contre l'humanité pour tout simplement éviter qu'ils continuent d'endeuiller cette région martyre. Ayons le courage de reconnaître nos erreurs du passé. Ayons le courage de dire la vérité et effectuer le travail de mémoire. Chers compatriotes congolais, ayons le courage de prendre notre destin en main. Construisons la paix. Au nom de toutes les veuves, de tous les veufs, des orphelins des massacres commis en République démocratique du Congo et de tous les Congolais épris de paix, j'appelle la communauté internationale à enfin considérer les rapports du projet Mapping et ses recommandations. Que le droit soit dit. Cela permettrait au peuple congolais d'en faire pleurer ses morts, faire son deuil, pardonner ses bourreaux, dépasser sa souffrance et se projeter sereinement dans le futur. Pour les Sahara, pour les femmes, les hommes et les enfants du Congo, je vous lance un appel urgent de ne pas seulement nous remettre le prix Nobel de la paix, mais de vous mettre debout et de dire ensemble et à haute voix, la violence en République démocratique du Congo, c'est assez. Trop, c'est trop. La paix maintenant. Je vous remercie.
Hello and welcome to HMG Network, broadcasting live from the Greater Washington Metropolitan. My name is Freeman Singirankabo, and this is a special coverage on the Congo Week. of justice to the Congo. So in our broadcast today, we have our brothers and sisters from the East African community joining the call. And today our moderator is going to be Claude Gatebuke, the Executive Director for the African Great Lakes Action Network. Claude, take it away, brother.
Thank you, Freeman, for the opportunity, and grateful to HMG Studio for broadcasting this live to the world, and this being delivered to the African continent on local television. So everybody watching from the continent, hello, greetings to everybody. And everybody that's watching on social media, I see Emeba Mukunde, Patrick Kavamenshi, Tina Uwera, and a lot of you, Eugenie Janti, and I can't go through all of the names, but greetings to all of you. Hello. Certainly, there's something sync. We just ask you that you share the links here so that your friends and your networks can watch live here. It's an honor for me to moderate this panel, this very esteemed panel. I want to remind everybody, we are a part of the call to, this is AGLAN, African Great Lakes Action Network. We're joining our friends at Friends of the Congo in the call to make January the 17th International Lumumba Day worldwide. So just a reminder, that's next week. Next Sunday is the day. Again, we are here because we are concerned with peace, and we know there can be no peace without justice. And in order to have justice, there has to be truth. So our sisters and brothers from the East African community are joining our Congolese sisters and brothers and the rest of the world in the call for justice on the crimes documented in a mapping report, the UN mapping report. We are joining Dr. Mukwege's call for justice in the Congo. And today we have a very esteemed panel that I would like to just allow to introduce themselves. We all come from various countries in the East African community. So I will let my colleague Milton Alimadi start with his own introduction.
Yes, thank you so much, comrade. I send greetings and Happy New Year. Greetings to sisters and brothers all over the world, my African sisters and brothers, and my non-African sisters and brothers as well. This is indeed a very critical and important event. My name is Milton Alimadi. I'm born in Uganda. I am currently adjunct professor of African history at John Jay College, which is part of the City University of New York system here in New York City. And I am also the publisher of Black Star News, which is online on blackstarnews.com, and also host a weekly radio show called Black Star News Show on WBAI 99.5 FM radio, which is a listener-supported FM station here in New York City, and it's also live streamed on WBAI.org. And it's every Tuesday at 3 p.m. And I've had guests from all over the world. And I've been happy that I've also interviewed Comrade Cloud on a number of occasions to discuss issues, the challenges we face, not only in East Africa, but in the entire African continent and in the African diaspora. So thank you for having me as a part of this webinar today. Thank you, comrade.
We'll go over to you, Sister BK Benedict.
Hello, everybody, and happy to be here today. My name is Benedict Kumbi Joko, and I was born in the Congo, in Kinshasa in particular. And I live now in Geneva. I'm the coordinator of the ecological civic movement called Likambo Yamabele, which is the case for the land. And what we do at Likambo Yamabele is that we try to gather to unite Congolese in order for them to fight for their land and defend their interests. So I've been, of course, talking about my country for a long time now, trying to defend what I think is right for our country. And I'm also a history professor in what we call here in Geneva College, because I live in Switzerland, in Geneva. And so I'm very much interested, of course, in history, and try to make that accessible also to our fellow African brothers and sisters, because I think that this is something that really that we miss a lot. So these are my interests, and of course I'm very happy to be here with you today, and I salute everybody out there, brothers and sisters all around the world, and Happy New Year to you all.
And Sister Delphine.
Hi everybody, my name is Delphine Andamutso, and I'm so happy to be here. I'm Australian of Rwandan origin, and this is a great cause. I'm so honored to be with this great panel, and thank you all for watching. Thank you all for your support, and Happy New Year as well. So I'm really looking forward to today's show. We're going to have a good time talking about these issues that are so close to our hearts. So thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Claude, for having me here.
Thank you. And Brother Abraham Mutai. Looks like you're on mute. Okay. While we're waiting for Brother Abraham to introduce himself, and
okay, I think I can go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm quite happy and grateful to be part of this conversation. As I've been introduced, my name is Abraham Mutai. I'm from Kenya, and I'm also a governance and development enthusiast. I can say I'm an activist in the governance issues across Africa. I do speak a lot about issues happening in Central Africa, West Africa, and of course in the DR Congo, as well as what's happening in East Africa, and of course in my own country. I'm also involved in several civic organizations here in Kenya. I do run an organization that speaks more on consumer rights in my country here in Kenya. But I'm more much into political leadership across Africa. So I'm quite grateful for this opportunity. For those who are watching us from across the world, I think it's going to be a good conversation that we are going to have at this time. I hope my audio is doing well.
Yes, we can hear you well. Thank you. I noticed that I only said hello to the people on the African continent, but then I noticed there are people from all over the world. I see people from Australia. I see especially a special shout out to you guys, Friends of the Congo, ATL, Atlanta, Sam Livingston, Kwame, and the rest of you. I see you guys in the comments. I see people in Canada, the Netherlands, Belgium. All of you, hello, people in France, people in Rwanda, people in Kenya, in Congo, and the rest of the East African community, Uganda, and the rest of you. So to start this conversation, I wanted to bring back Brother Milton Ali Mahdi to speak about the general framework of the mapping report, and you know, this is a conversation, so the style of this today is going to be, you know, conversational. So what is what's in the mapping report? Let's start there, and then we'll go to who the perpetrators are.
Well, the mapping report looks at a small slice of the horrific crimes that have occurred in Congo, particularly Eastern Congo. And it focuses on a certain range of years from 1993 to 2003. So obviously, if anyone is to talk about the mapping report, they should not think that the crimes in the Congo are limited only to that period. Obviously, it's a big deal, the mapping report, because it was something commissioned by the United Nations. So it got much attention. But that is not the scope of the crimes in the Congo, because as we know, the crimes continue even up today. So I wanted to get that off for listeners that perhaps, or viewers that are not familiar with the ongoing crimes in the Congo. And they might ask themselves, well, if they're talking about 1993 to 2003, maybe that implies that things are now good in the Congo, which is of course not the case. So I thought it was important to say that offhand. So the mapping report was specific because in 2005, I believe it was that year, when mass graves were discovered in Eastern Congo. So the UN decided that perhaps this warrants further investigation. And then I don't know particularly why the scope was set to that particular range, but it's true that some of the most horrific crimes did occur within that specific range. So let's accept that for whatever reason, they determined that to look at that range. They had investigators, they had a staff of, I think it was about 33 individuals involved in conducting the research and interviewing the people. And they focused on 617, I believe, instances of these crimes. And what are some of these crimes? The crimes involved summary executions. It involved mass rapes. It involved mutilation and decapitations. It involved the killings, not of armed combatants, but of including even the elderly who were not able to flee from their attackers. And I'm talking in particular about people attacked from the soldiers that had invaded from Rwanda as well as from Uganda. It involved people being burnt inside their houses. It involved people being shot in mass numbers, mass executions. So these were some of the crimes documented in the report. And the most disturbing element in the report was that the crimes were ethnically targeting. And in this particular case, I'm talking about the crimes against the refugees that had fled from Rwanda after the RPF had secured power and expelled the former army of the previous regime.
Yes, Brother Milton, I think just so the audience understands, I know there are people who are just learning about these things. The RPF is the Rwandan Patriotic Front, which
the Rwandan Patriotic Front, yeah, which is the current government in Rwanda.
Please, yeah.
And the rationale that the government of Rwanda then provided was that they were targeting people who had committed crimes in Rwanda, and the United Nations had failed to secure these former soldiers. And that was the rationale. But the report found that the soldiers had been disarmed after they had fled. And they're alleged by the Rwandan government to have been responsible for committing genocide in Rwanda. So the UN says they had been disarmed, and that in fact, the people that were targeted were not limited in any case to people who could have been these former soldiers. That ordinary civilians, including children, women, and the elderly, had been targeted, and that the targeting was ethnically based, which of course suggests that this would amount to acts of genocide. And I would like to read only from one part of this long report, which is over 550 pages. I just want to read one sentence, which I think is critical for the purpose of our discussion today. Quote, It is therefore possible to assert that even if only a part of the Hutu population in Zaire was targeted and destroyed, it could nonetheless constitute a crime of genocide if this was the intention of the perpetrators, end quote. So this is one of the key findings of the mapping report, in addition to the fact that the atrocities were so systemic that it could not be argued that these are the kind of acts that may happen during any type of war. That yes, there is collateral damage during every conflict, every war, but in this specific case, the targeting of people by ethnicity, in some cases herding them specifically to a location and then eliminating them, in some cases offering them protection if they agree to surrender, and then summarily executing them after they had surrendered, suggests that this was a planned, premeditated operation. I think that is the quickest way to summarize what the mapping report was about.
So just move this conversation forward, Professor Milton. So you're saying, and I like to say the same, this is only documenting 617 incidents over the period of 10 years, and those things are still happening today. But the report also has a list of perpetrators in terms of what countries, who was the most responsible, who are the most responsible for these crimes.
Are you asking me, or are you asking me what I would say, or are you asking me what the mapping report says?
Both.
Okay, so
you are a professor, and you're a professor.
Let me answer the first part then. Who is responsible for all these crimes? I think it's something we can get into a bit again later on, but there's no mystery that all these crimes have been occurring since 1986. When in Uganda, the current ruler, the dictator, General Yoweri Museveni, seized power in Uganda militarily and has held power militarily in Uganda and has exported his militarism from 1986 gradually to the entire region. So that is who is actually responsible. And that is why the mapping report also finds that Uganda and senior officers of the Ugandan military were responsible for these crimes. And the same thing with Rwanda and senior officers of the government there, including the military commanders and past military commanders, are responsible for these crimes. And I think people should not downplay the origin of these crimes when I say 1986, because, and I think we can get into this discussion further later on again, there is a pattern in the type of these crimes. There's consistency in the types of the crimes, the mass executions of people, the burning of people inside their homes, the mass rapes of women and men, which was unique actually in the Congo, because even during the atrocities of Mobutu, I don't recall ever reading of men being raped as well, even at the height of the dictatorship of Mobutu. And of course, I'm not saying this to downplay the rape women. I'm just saying this to show that this new kind of crime was introduced at a particular time after it had already occurred in Uganda, when General Museveni had crushed and suppressed people in the northern part of Uganda. These same types of crimes, the mutilation of people, decapitation of people, including children, burying people alive, putting people in under the ground and then covering the top of the pits and setting fire, so roasting people alive. These crimes were perpetrated in Uganda from 1986 and principally until 2006. which also covers the entire period of the mapping report. And then from Uganda, it was exported to Rwanda, when Rwanda was invaded from Uganda in 1990. And then the same crimes were exported to the Congo after Congo was invaded in 1996 and 1997 by the armies of Uganda and the armies of Rwanda. And these were the same soldiers who had practiced and perfected these crimes in Uganda before exporting it to the entire region.
Thank you for that, Professor Milton Alimadi. It looks like this is all systematic. And I want to bring in Sister Delphine into the conversation, because you were in the Congo when the Congo was invaded in 1996. And I just want to ask you this question straight. Is this stuff real or is it made up? You were in the Congo during that time. And there are people who say that these crimes are fake. In fact, even in the comments right now, there is somebody who's saying that what's documented in the report is false or should be questioned. And you know, I just want you to speak to, you know, what was your experience, and is it real, or are these things made up?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Claude, for the opportunity, and thank you, Brother Milton Alimadi. And I think just hearing you, because sometimes I probably don't want to read or don't want to hear it out loud. So thank you for, you know, that introduction. Just turns my stomach just hearing it, because that's real. And like you said, Claude, these things are so real. So when the invasion happened, or after the war and genocide in Congo, I was part of the refugees, like my family and you know, a lot of people, we were refugees in the refugee camps. And I remember what happened. And when the camps were invaded, when you know, I can probably hear or see the, you know, the chaos or the running, or what was happening, you know, like what Milton was saying, you know, the herding, you know, the like sort of like shooting or bombing in one side and herding people towards one side, the other side, and killing, shooting, and mass, you know, like there's nothing more real than that, you know, and survived it. And I believe that there's a reason why myself and so many other people survived, to tell that this is real, this is what's real. So I really don't know what to respond to people who are saying this is not real. You just need to.
Can you maybe
to see the witnesses? Pardon?
Just so you know, to keep it straight, can you describe just a little bit what the scene was like the first time it hit you, if that isn't too much to ask?
I'll do my best, because just it's sort of you know, it's terrifying to just think about it. As a child, I was a child. I was, you know, and in my eyes, in my vision, and you cannot describe. Probably the parents or the older people could describe it better, but in the eyes of a child, you know, I can probably give a little bit about when it started. You know, the shooting, the camp I was in was called Katale, and the invasion or the shooting started during the night. So you can hear the shooting and the bombs, and sometimes he like see the little red, you know, I don't know, bullets or whatever flying in the air. And sort of people, because it came out of nowhere, people going everywhere. You don't know what to take, you don't know where to go, because it sounded like it was coming from every side of the camp. So you wouldn't know where to go, what direction. For example, if you go left, you probably hear that it's in front of you. So you would just, I can remember the chaos, the people not knowing what to do, what to take, just sort of running. And leaving the camps and going into the forest. I guess the rest is a long story. However, I can remember that journey from the camp, the refugee camp, the Katale, to the forest. That as a child, I can picture, I can still see those very, very, very tall trees. Like we trying to find a way and trying to stick together with their families, and sometimes missing your family members, sometimes finding them, sometimes never finding them at all. And just, some people dying, or some people missing or falling into something. It's just, you cannot tell me that's not real. And I don't probably, like if I have to tell the whole story, it would be a long story. But I remember that journey from the camp to in the middle of the forest, and to sort of, sometimes you'd be circling, you'd be returning to where you came from, because there was no way. Like people had to find a way away from the bombs and the bullets. So, and sometimes you find yourself stuck because you feel like you circled, you're surrounded.
So Delphine, I guess there's my other question before we continue the conversation with Brother Abraham is, why is it so important for you to share this story with the world? Why is it important for the survivors to also do this? What you're doing, which I think is very difficult, hearing about these, systematic and horrific crimes. And I'm sure you probably relive them when when you're thinking about your story and sharing your story. But why is it important to share this with the world?
It is important to share it because this is part of our history. Liking it or not, it's a part of our history, our stories. We've lived it, we survived it. And that's why I don't, people who say that, it's not true, or they don't believe it. But that's why we're here, I believe. That's why we're here. That's why we survived it. Even though it was probably done systematically to think that we would eliminate everyone, like to finish any witness whatsoever. But it's important to tell, because this is our story. As hard as, sad as it is, but this is part of our history. And it is important to talk about it, because people still, like Brother Milton was saying, it's still happening, it's still occurring. And there's no justice, there's no addressing it, even addressing it. Like I was listening to Dr. Mukwege's speech. The report is somewhere in some ways, draw is being put somewhere, and nothing's been done about it. Nothing's been done about it. So it is important. I believe it is very important to talk about it, because not only for, like, personally, it's not only myself, other survivors. It's part of our therapy, because you cannot be denied to tell a part of your history. You cannot be told to only tell some parts of your lives, some parts of your history, and then leave out some chapters. How does that work? So I believe it is important for me to tell my story, because it's part of my life, and also to raise that awareness that this is very, very real. This stuff happened, and also to encourage other people who have survived to talk about it. I guess the reasons, the list can go on, but I believe that's enough for now.
There's a lot of people expressing gratitude to you for sharing your story, so thank you. And there's a lot of people who are, standing strength your way, and I join them in standing strength, not only your way, but to everybody else. Excuse me. Everybody in the Congo that's going through this. And special shout out to the people who are watching from Eastern DRC. I saw some of them also letting us know that they're here. I want to especially thank you for putting a human face to these atrocities, because sometimes we hear these things and we think this is just a report, but when you tell it and you lived it, it makes it even more real, because we can shake hands, we can see you, we can feel your voice, and you can describe the scene. So thank you for doing that. And with that, I wanted to bring in, and we'll continue the conversation in the Q&A. I want to bring in Brother Abraham, Abraham Mutai, to continue going around the East Africa.
Thank you so much.
Wanted to start with, how did you get introduced to the Congo?
The story of the Congo has been a big story in East Africa, and Kenyans, most Kenyans have been closely following the story of the Congo for a while now. Some of us, we've been reading a lot of books, we've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube, and others have been produced by so many activists from Congo. So specifically, how I really got to get involved with the issues of the Congo is there's this group called Friends of Congo. I think Claudio, the one who introduced me to that group sometimes back. But the issues of the Congo became quite prominent recently.
By the way, Abraham, there's a lot of friends of the Congo watching from around the world, and from Atlanta is especially here, very present.
Thank you so much. So recently, the Congo became quite prominent, especially in Kenya, after our politicians got so much involved in the last general election that happened in DR Congo. Our politicians got involved. They were there. The president Tshisekedi came over here, and slightly before that, there was an issue. There was some minerals, some gold that was actually on transit through Kenya. Somehow they said it belonged to the government of Kabila, but of course, those were the things that were on the media. So we can't deny or actually even confirm, but it's what was on the media. So that gold somehow got lost somewhere in Kenya, and Kabila had to come over here to look for it or ask for it or something like that. But it was during this kind of happenings that actually got so many Kenyans talking about the DR Congo, and Kenyans have been so much into the issues in Congo, and they are involved. We talk about these issues in Congo. And for us, for someone like me, myself, I feel that the Democratic Republic of Congo could be actually the China, or I can say could be the South Korea or the Japan or even the America of Africa, because of the resources that are in that country. The country is quite big. I mean, it's literally the rest of the country. The whole country is a resource in itself, from the forest, from the rivers. I mean, the minerals. If we had an organized government in the Democratic Republic of Congo, I believe that Congo could be leading the rest of Africa economically. It could be an economic giant in Africa, and it's actually so sad. It is sickening. It is really disgusting seeing such a country going to waste, and all the resources actually being looted. And while the rest of the politicians in Africa are watching and essentially doing nothing towards stabilizing that country. So it is actually a very sad scenario, it's a very sad situation, especially when you watch and read the history all the way from 1993 or even somewhere thereabouts. Even reading the history coming up to now, the fights that are going on there. I mean, we talk about the armed struggle that is ongoing there. Talk about militia. We talk about people trying to secede. I mean, it is really it is sickening. And you look at the children, you look at the at women. People are suffering there, and you just wonder. The mere thought of imagining what this country could be in terms of should it be organized? Should the country be organized and actually govern itself and utilize the resources that are in that country? The mere thought of imagining the potential, I mean, what the country could be, actually makes someone who is enthusiastic about issues in Africa, it makes someone annoyed looking at the situation, at how it is at the moment. So this is how I got involved.
Yeah, so I want to, being a Kenyan, Kenya is an interesting place because it seems a little bit removed from Congo, but it sounds like it's getting a little bit more connected. The last time I was in Kenya, one of the major perpetrators in these atrocities, Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, is he seemed to be very well celebrated. I mean, I look at the matatus, you know, the buses, and there's like
Yes.
some of them have like Kagame on them, you know, things like that, you know, and I can just see somebody from Congo being totally disgusted with seeing something like that after losing their family or seeing these atrocities. So what's it like now in Kenya in terms of now the understanding of the Congo, and you're here pushing for justice? Is this even a reality, something that can be real in Kenya?
I can say that things have changed quite a bit. For the last 2 years, I can say approximately before 2017, most of us activists and people who speak a lot on governance, we never really used to speak out issues outside the Republic of Kenya. But at the moment, you'll find that some of us, a small group of us, we are so much invested in speaking on issues that are happening outside Kenya. Like right now, a few days ago, we were so much involved on the issues that were happening in Tanzania. We even hosted some of their politicians who are, you know, running, seeking asylum. Currently, we are so much invested on issues that are happening in Uganda. We are supporting the struggle over there. We are seeing what Museveni is doing. We are supporting our friends there through social media, messages, and even organizing on the ground. We even have some of their people coming over here, Kenya, joining us and having conversations and, you know, giving them support. Now, I'm saying this because just a few years ago, around 2017 backwards, we really never used to talk a lot about issues outside the country. But if you come right now, we are so much invested on issues that are happening outside this country. And that is the time we started talking about Paul Kagame. So essentially, when you came here, nobody really knew who Paul Kagame was. And actually, most Kenyans don't even know there exists a report like the mapping report that actually implicates quite a number of leaders across East Africa. We started having these conversations, and the conversations got at the peak during the time we initiated that campaign of Diana Rigara, when the lady was arrested and put in jail, and also Victoria Ingabire and Kizito Mihigo and the others. When these people were put in jail, I remember very well. The media was not so invested in speaking about these things, especially the media in East Africa. So we started this campaign, and I remember we did it and we pushed until the rest of groups around East Africa, and of course even in the USA. I remember you guys led a demonstration in the USA. There was a statement that was read in the Congress. So it was during this time that we really had a great conversation about who Paul Kagame was. And it was this time that Kenyans started understanding who Paul Kagame actually was. I mean, Kenyans didn't even know the history around how Paul Kagame became the president. They just understand there was a genocide, and Paul Kagame stopped the genocide, and he became president. That's what actually Kenyans knew. But thanks to the conversations that we've been able to have over time, since that time, the perception of Paul Kagame in Kenya has totally changed. And I can assure you, he has never come back here for quite a while. I don't know why, but Paul Kagame has never been to Kenya for a really, really long time. So the perception has changed. It has really changed. Kenyans have understood that Paul Kagame actually has some serious tendencies towards being, dictatorial. Kenyans have understood that there are people running away from Rwanda because their rights are being infringed. Kenyans have understood there are people who've died in Rwanda and outside Rwanda in some very mysterious circumstances, and all the fingers they are pointing to Paul Kagame. So at the moment, I assure you, if you come to Kenya, you won't find a bus that has a picture of Paul Kagame. And let me mention something just before I go. I remember we had this major conversation about the arrest of Victoria Ingabire, the arrest of Kizito, and even during the death of Kizito, I remember we had these very in-depth conversations about the history of Rwanda. And I remember Nigerians were so much surprised. I mean, don't even talk about Kenya. Nigeria, people in Nigeria actually literally worship this guy. They think Paul Kagame is some angel, some angel, you know. So the Nigerians were so surprised. I could see their comments. I mean, they were so surprised to find out that Paul Kagame jailed people who tried to run for president, and you know, they were just surprised. So I can say it is good to have these conversations, especially across Africa, so that the younger generation like us, you know, the younger generation, we don't read a lot. I mean, we don't read history. We are so I can say we are so engaged on issues that we don't even find time to read the history where we've come from and understand, you know, our place in that history. So I think these conversations are key. They are very good. They help us get to understand where we are coming from.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm glad that everyone is starting to understand, and I think you know, we ask you. I know you have, you know, 500,000 people that follow you around the continent. You know, continue to educate. I would actually say there's a Nigerian sister who speaks about the Congo and in the Central African region, in the Great Lakes region. Sister Adeola, shout out to you if you're watching. And a lot of times, the temperature in Nigeria, you just talked about Nigeria, they pretty much called her a hater whenever she would bring this up. But I think in recent years, in the last 3-4 years, with all of the work that's been going on, especially since the commemoration of the 20 years of invasion of the Congo, a lot of people have opened their eyes. And I'm glad that East Africa is doing that. And we invite the rest of East Africa to continue to join us, and the rest of the continent and the rest of the world to continue to join us in calling for justice. So what would you like to see happen in terms of the mapping report, as far as everyone in the East African community? What should we be doing to make sure that Congo realizes its potential, which would benefit all of us on the continent?
I want to join the rest of the voices who've been calling for implementation of the recommendations. And of course, moving forward, I saw there are around 617 cases that were identified by the mapping report. And each of these cases, it had at least 2 witnesses to it, to all these cases. And there were around 1,300 plus number of witnesses that were identified on these cases across the Congo. Of course, there were also some individuals who were mentioned. What I could really wish to happen for this report is we don't want to wish away. What really irks me a lot is when people try to edit history, when people try to, when people try to impose their own fashion of history, and they want everybody else to go along with that fashion of history. There were people who were wronged in the Congo. There were people who were wronged during 1993, even up to 2005, actually. So my appeal is that we need to start having these conversations and force our leadership. We need to force our leadership, even the United Nations, even I don't really think the African Union can, but the United Nations can have these people and charge them for human rights violations. So it is happening. We've seen it. It happened in Ivory Coast. We've seen it even here in Kenya. We saw our president, our current president, and the deputy president were at the ICC answering to the charges like this ones. So why is it that it's not happening in the Central Africa? Why is it not happening even in Rwanda? Why is it not happening even in Burundi? So I could say the mapping report is a very good beginning point, where the rest of Africans, and that's why I have always said these things will happen if people like us could actually come together and start having these conversations and voice them out to an extent that we have a one voice across Africa that speaks about these issues, it will force our leadership to actually take action. Some of these people, we don't need to assume, we don't need to wish them away. These people were wronged, and the people who perpetrated those sins are still alive. We even saw Felsen Kabuga was arrested the other day. He was still alive. So these people are alive. They need to answer to these charges. They need to answer to what happened. Some people lost their friends, people lost their families, people lost their children, and they're still alive. Those people who lost their children are still alive. So they still need justice. And I always believe that for us to come to a point of reconciliation, Paul Kagame preaches every day about forgiveness and reconciliation. How are you preaching about forgiveness and reconciliation while the other party that you want to reconcile with, you can't even recognize what happened to them? So you need to recognize what happened to the other party, and then you call them to the table and tell them, we are sorry. Let's begin from a clean slate, all of us, because if there's nothing we can do about it, we can do what we call a reconciliation. And that's what happened in Kenya. In Kenya, we have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that came up with all the atrocities that were committed in Kenya, the people who were chased, the people who were displaced from their own land, and it gave recommendations. And some of those recommendations were people need to recognize the crimes they did. Even those who did those crimes, if they are dead, the government needs to actually apologize on behalf of the rest of these other people. And therefore, everyone else will come to the table, and we greet each other, we shake hands and say, we are sorry for what happened. We did this, we are so sorry. Let's start from a clean slate. And this is what Paul Kagame is preaching. So if you are preaching that, then recognize what happened to the other people. So the mapping report can help all of us to sit down in the DR Congo. We sit down and actually come up with tangible solutions. Some of those solutions is actually to put some of these people on the dock and answer to some of these charges.
Yeah, thank you. There is someone in the comments that keeps asking, why should we believe the mapping report as the gust truth? And I want to say, no, it's not, because it's only documenting 617 incidents. And there was thousands and thousands of incidents. And so, yes, the truth, even more of the truth needs to come out. Thank you for that. If you were questioning the fact that those things happened, we actually saying it doesn't say enough, and all of it needs to come to the fore, and there needs to be justice. I want to bring in Sister Benedict to talk about what you see as the rest of Africa, the rest of us, and the rest of the world. What should we do to continue, supporting justice in the Congo? And I know that Lumumba said that a thriving Congo is a thriving Africa, and I believe that also. And Abraham talked about that. The potential of the Congo will be very beneficial to all of us, not only the continent, but the world. So please share with us, what do you think should we wake up to that call?
Thank you. I would like to say that what I wish really to hear each time I hear talking about the Congo, about its economical potential and so forth, what I would like really to hear is that the Congolese people are going to benefit the world. Before the minerals, before all the other riches that we can have, is that the Congolese people are going to benefit the world. The fact that they are alive, and the fact that they bring to the world what makes them unique, the fact that we are so many and yet different, but at the same time the same, and that we bring that unique flavor, I think, to the world, for me would be very important to hear that. And to hear that Congolese lives matter. Because I'm asking myself, what is a Congo without Congolese? It's just maybe earth, minerals, but there is no Congo. And at the moment, what is going on is that Congolese people are eliminated from the surface of the world. Because of course the mapping report shows those incidents. But there is something for me that is quite striking when I look at this report and when I look at the issue of rape in particular. When you look at the issue of rape in that report, what you see is that all the regions in the Congo have been affected, which means that Congolese women all over Congo have been raped. And I would like people to ask themselves that question. Why are people raping other people? And in that fashion, in the fashion that we saw in Congo. And if it's not in order to stop the generation, in order to really, it shows, of course, the way people are despised. But when you rape a human being in that fashion, how it has been done in Congo, you control people's minds. You really diminish men in particular. And then it breaks down the community and people are not able to live together anymore. And this is a way of killing that people. It is a way of killing Congolese people, to kill their ability to perpetuate and just to be who they are. And this is also what I call a genocide. Maybe not so obvious like the one that is described in the report against our brothers and sisters from Rwanda and Hutus in particular, because when it comes to Congo, the report tends to show that there are certain groups and even some ethnic groups that are going to fight each other. But at the end, what my question is that what do all those people share? And what those people share is that they are Congolese. And if I speak about the genocide of the Congolese people, is that as Brother Milton has said, after 2003, it didn't stop. It didn't stop. It is continuing till today. And if we look at what the Security Council has done after 2003, each year there was a report on the Congo. So from 2004 to 2020, we saw the last one coming out some weeks ago. And all those reports shows that the killing in the Congo is ongoing. So which means that there is a consensus somewhere that these people have to be eliminated, and they have to be eliminated first from that eastern part of our country. But at the same time, we let the other part of the country unattended, which also kill people in other fashion, because there is, if you look at the Kasai, there is hunger, there is no way for people to find medicines if they are sick. So we really have that will, I would say, to really eliminate the Congolese people, because of course the first thing that people are talking about when they talk about Congo, it's about the wealth of the Congo. And I feel always sorry, as I said, that people fail to mention that our first treasure, I would say, in Congo are its people. And as long as people won't have any compassion for the Congolese people, of course, the situation will be hard. It's not just it's not a political problem, meaning that we need better elections and so forth in order to bring that to an end. We need the world to recognize that there is really something profoundly unbearable that is happening in the Congo. And again, I mean, Pons Fanon, of course, was saying that Africa has the shape of a gun and the trigger is the Congo. But at the moment, that trigger actually only produces death. Because when you look again, it has a centrality at the moment of death. Because not only Congolese people are killed, but the report is showing, of course, that our brothers and sisters from Hutu ethnicities are killed. But the report also showed that when the Angolans intervened in the Congo, it was also to kill the people from Cabinda. So a lot of Africans are present in that report and showing that how the killing is going on in the Congo. And I think that, yes, the world needs to have compassion. The world needs to say that Congolese people have the right to be respected and they have the right to their lives. And that if Africans in general will feel for the Congolese as they would feel for their own families member, maybe the voices are going to be more powerful in order to address that problem. Because I think that 25 years is enough, really. And millions of people, millions, we are not talking about, one or two persons. We are talking about millions of people who have lost their lives. We talk about Congolese, as I said, we talk about Rwandans, we talk about Angolans, we talk about so many people. And yet the world, and I would say in a sense where the African world first is keeping silent. And it is important for me that people talk about the Congo, because of course then they would talk about Uganda, they would talk about Rwanda, because I was shocked when I started interesting myself into what happened in Uganda and to the Acholi people. When I was looking at that, I mean, it was obvious for me that these were the same people. These were the same people. The same thing they've been doing there, the same thing they've been doing in Rwanda. And I asked myself, after Congo, what would it be? And I think that the African people have to ask themselves that question. After Congo, which country is going to suffer under those criminals? Because they have their own way to pertain to Africa, is because they can move from a country to another. They don't belong to any one of those countries of ours. And they don't see themselves as Africans. They are just a community of killers that can act in Uganda, they can act in Rwanda, they can act in Congo, because what they do at the end is that, of course, they obey to the needs of the multinationals, and they present themselves as the perfect killers.
Benedict, Sister Benedict, I want to get to that point because the audience is really, really hungry for that question. It's been coming up a lot. And shout out to Brother Kambale Musafuli of Friends of the Congo. He's also following. He usually kind of addresses this question. The role, I want to get to eventually, what you see as justice for the Congo, but the role of the international communities. Right now, we're talking about the Criminals Without Borders. Again, this term was coined by Kambale. Examples being people like General James Kabarebe in Rwanda and Kagame himself. They were Ugandans in the military of Uganda, fought a war, killed Ugandan people, then came down to Rwanda, killed Rwandan people, then went to Congo, killed Congolese people. They held government posts as citizens inside every one of those three countries, except, of course, Kagame didn't hold a post in the Congo. But Kabarebe himself was in the Ugandan military, and then the Rwandan military, and then at one point he was the military chief of staff of the Congo. Again, thank you, Kambale, for the term. We have Doctors Without Borders, we have Journalists Without Borders, and we also have Criminals Without Borders. These are the Africans. And if I can use history as a way to paint the picture, when the slave trade was happening and the Europeans were coming and abducting and kidnapping and chaining Africans and taking them away, there were Africans who were helping them, the local players. And to me, that is what the Kagames, the Musevenis, and all these other African players are providing. But who were they supporting? Because again, even the slave trade was Europeans basically trading Africans. You know, it was a global trade. So you talked about the multinationals and also the international community. Can you speak to that before we go to the question of, you know, what do you see as justice for the Congo based on this mapping report?
But I think that justice cannot come without truth. If we want to see something happening, we need to talk the truth. And that truth, of course, is linked, I would say, to the way Congo has been imagined or thought by the colonizers, because there is something that is not changing there. If you look at the way Congo, I would say, was born under the colonial rule and what it had to serve for is exactly the same that we have today. Meaning that, and this is something that always struck me, is that when we talk about Berlin, and when Leopold II took, that private space for himself, something that was said there is that all the countries that were in Berlin, actually, even though they were at war somewhere else in the world, they would have access to the Congo and they could trade freely. And today it's the same problem. It's always that idea that people can, be at war somewhere else in the world, but they will trade in the Congo. And if there is nobody, as a new Leopold, who was actually the first proxy in the world, because this is how I call him. Now today we have new proxies, and they are Africans like Paul Kagame, like Museveni, and I would say also Uhuru Kenyatta in certain extent also. All those people are the new proxies, are the little Leopold who guarantee the access to the Congo to the multinational by killing Africans. So justice comes with truth. Justice comes with the understanding of what history is, because we cannot think the Congo today without looking back. And too many people try to talk about Congo looking at it just today and say it's not functioning. But we need to understand why it didn't function. And if we look at history, of course, we'll have the question, of the pillage of the country. But we will also have to think questions like trauma that also intervenes, in this story. How can people fight when they've been suffering, for centuries? How trauma also intervenes in this kind of questions. So these are all the questions that need to be addressed, I think, in order to have justice. And of course, justice starts with the truth. And people need to understand, and African in particular, is that helping Congo is helping Rwanda, is helping Uganda, and is also helping, Central Africa, all those countries around, because they were involved in the Congo. And this will also bring, shed lights to what has been happening in the other countries that we need to address as well. Somehow people in Uganda needs to have justice too. People in Rwanda need to have justice too. And this, you cannot, come to the fore with that justice if you don't say the truth about Congo, if you don't say the truth about other countries. So I think this is really the main thing that we need to do. And of course, we ask our brothers and sisters around Africa in particular to open their ears and just to listen to what we have to say. And don't say that we are talking nonsense, because actually what we say, doesn't match with what maybe Western medias have been selling to them. Like, for instance, that Paul Kagame, he's a Pan-Africanist, and that he actually leads his country for the benefit of his people and the Africans. listen to what we have to say, listen to what Delphine has to say. Her story is very much true. Her story is going on today in the Congo, and we need to address that.
So, in the report and various other reports over the years, we see that, what really is the fuel for the conflict in the Congo is the resources, right? They're not benefiting Africans except for the Criminals Without Borders. The Africans and the people in the Congo especially, but then the rest of us on the continent, are not benefiting from the potential of the Congo. But we have multinationals. The list is long. I want to give a resource to everybody that's watching. If you go to conflictminerals.org, you'll see a list of multinationals that have been involved in the Congo. If you go to the resource center on the friendsofthecongo.org site, you'll see a lot of resources that show you who are the players. And the players are not just Africans. People like the Africans, the Criminals Without Borders, like the Kagames, the Musevenis, and all the other players are serving Western interest. They are supported, financed, armed, and diplomatically covered and politically covered by countries such as the US, the UK, France, and others. And I think this is a problem all over the continent of Africa. And somehow that context is important, because I remember when the mapping report came out, I believe Brother Milton was at the protest. It had been months when we were pushing for the report to be released, and the US mission to the UN blocked it. Not only that one, but also the M23 report when it came out in 2012. So all of these things, there is the international piece to it. And I think continuing to tell the truth and shedding light on this is going to open it up. But do you see a different way of doing it? And then lastly, what kind of justice? I know that there's talk of transitional justice or local courts versus, international criminal tribunals, which personally, and us at AGLAN and our partners, we support international justice, not just simply some local, cooked and, something that the perpetrators will end up controlling. But I just wanted you to speak to that a little bit, and then we'll move to the questions from the audience.
Yeah, well, another way of doing, apart from saying the truth, but I think this is what we're doing. I mean, people cannot, embrace, I think, a cause if they don't know about it. So we need also to share our experiences. We need to share our understanding of what is happening in that region. Of course, now we have that pandemic, and it's very difficult for us, to try to make conferences. But I think that things like Zoom also are opportunities for us, to really gather and try to mediate, what is happening in our region. So I think that we are not going to invent the things, I think that it was General Le Duan from Vietnam when the Americans, asked them if they could negotiate. And of course, there is this fight, talk theory that we talk about. This is the part of that story. But one thing he said, of course, we are going to fight until we have the first victory on the ground, and then maybe we are going to have a dialogue with the Americans. But the other part of the thing he said is that we are going to send people all over the world to make our case, understood, and tell people that our fight is right. So we are not going to invent, many things. We need to go all over the world and tell our truth. We need to take people to join not our way of looking at the world, but really just tell them what happened and why we are fighting and why what we're doing is right. And I think there is no other way than trying to convince people reading. And of course, is to explain people what the mapping report is. Not everybody is going to read the more than 581 pages, but we need maybe to try to explain that to them in simple words for them to understand. And I think that people like Delphine or others have maybe now to come also to the front for people to listen to them, to what they have to say. And I think that this is a way that we are going to push forward. And in a certain way, you know what? I think that we moved a lot compared, of course, to the previous year, where it was really impossible to talk about Paul Kagame, even question the slight things about him. But now I think that there are also people listening, and we have to be happy about that. And so we need to push in that direction. We have to support Dr. Mukwege's plea on the mapping report, and we have to understand that this is not his fight, but it's our fight. And I think that knowing from him, I know that what he wishes is that people embrace that fight as it is their fight, not his fight. So supporting his plea and fight for the mapping report and the others report is going to help us a lot in what we're doing. And I forgot your second question to that.
Yeah, it's about the tribunals.
Yes, and I think that as I was saying, supporting the call is also, I think, supporting an international tribunal, because, of course, if we have just a local tribunal, I would say, in the Congo, it won't be able to address, all the criminals. And as I said, if we talk about the mapping report, we need to be very clear about the fact that not only Congolese were killed first, but not all the criminals are Congolese. They are outside of the Congo, and we need to go after them. And it is only an international tribunal that can pursue that. And we also need, I think, in order to support that idea of the tribunal, we have to come back to what the international Court of Justice said about Uganda and Rwanda in particular, because this is a very important decision that was made there. Talking about Uganda and Rwanda, that they're eligible, from war crimes in Congo, genocide, and also pillage. And this is a very important decision that we have. And we need to push, for that decision also to come to the front in order to support that international tribunal for the Congo.
Yep. So before we move to the audience questions and comments, there's a lot of them coming, and thank you guys thank you all for participating. Continue sending your questions. We'll try to get to as many as possible, but time is limited. And I will try to summarize some of the questions because there are literally hundreds of questions and or comments. But I wanted to remind everybody in the audience, those who missed the beginning part of this event is a part of also the call for the January 17th being recognized as International Lumumba Day. So I ask, if you are on social media, post something, tweet something, hashtag Lumumba Day. Thank you for doing that. We also want you to speak on what you heard here. Call for justice for the Congo. Tweet it out. Call it out on your social media, because that is how we inform the world today. Every one of you actually have you have power, you have your own media. Please use it for this cause, because this is important for all of us, Africa and the world, and Congo especially in particular. So to the questions, I want to bring back Brother Milton Alimadi on the geopolitics of what's happening in the Congo, and what we're calling for, justice that we're calling for. There's a lot of questions around geopolitics, just bringing some context and clarity on that, Brother Milton. I believe you're on mute, Brother Milton.
Okay, apologies. There's so much to cover. I want to thank Delphine, first of all, for sharing her painful story. It's important to hear from the voices, as you said, Claude. And I want to thank Mutai for really connecting all the pieces together in terms of the importance of having a regional approach, observing this not as a problem just for the Congo, but a problem for the entire region, and then making the connection. And I agree with him that it's very difficult to get young people to appreciate the history behind it. And we have to find a way of engaging young people, telling these stories in a very interesting way, maybe with images. Young people like graphics, you know. So we can make the history a little interesting too. You have to speak with the language that they understand. So that's upon us to be able to do that. But it's very important that we do that. And it's very gratifying to hear many of the things that Mutai said in terms of the focus now. People know more about what's really going on in Rwanda. People know what's going on in Uganda, the upcoming election next week. We're going to see very challenging circumstances. People, I'm sure, have been seeing the images of young people supporting this young candidate now in Uganda, you know, Bobi Wine, because they want to see change, not only in Uganda, but in the region. So it's very gratifying to hear that sisters and brothers in Kenya are also following these events very closely, because they know that it impacts them as well. And I say all this to stress the importance of all of us seeing the problems in Rwanda and Congo as a problem for all of us as East Africans, but as Africans as well. And listening to Benedict, it was very interesting because many of the things you were saying, you know, are part of my notes that I actually wrote down to speak on. And I actually specifically wrote down that what we can see in the Congo situation is the continuing rape of the resources that began under Leopold and has never changed. And you only have different types of actors now. But I think one thing that has become crystal clear in listening to my sisters and my brothers speak, we need to focus on the major beneficiaries of this exploitation too. The crimes are just a cover for the exploitation that's going on. The only reason why the Western powers tolerate these types of atrocities, where millions of people are killed, and pretend it's not happening, is because people are getting rich out of it. And to go back to, I don't know when it will reach this stage, but remember in the case of Leopold, he killed so many Congolese that even the other imperialist Western powers became ashamed. And they said, listen, we know all of us are colonialists, we're exploiting, but you are overdoing it. So what was their solution? To grant the Congolese independence? Of course not. They took the Congo and made it an official colony of the Belgian state. So I say all this to suggest that in the case of the Congo, the Western powers never found it embarrassing enough to say, look, Uganda, Rwanda, this is too much. You've gone too far. No, they've tolerated it. But I think we can turn the tables as well. And I think one way we can turn the tables is to go to these corporations. And the good thing is many of these corporations are known. We have their names. We have their stock symbols. They're traded in the major markets on Wall Street and in London. So I the first thing I propose before I address your question directly is to say we should have a series of webinars just focusing on these corporations that benefited from the blood of the Congolese. And we should not stop at only demanding for an apology. We should demand for reparations. They should pay for their crimes. And this money should go to compensating some of the survivors and the families of the people that endured these atrocities. And I think the timing is good to make this kind of demand, particularly in the post-George Floyd era, when the whole world and the United States is examining some of this history. And corporations, in fact, are now rushing forward to try to make some amends for the crimes they know they have been responsible in terms of tolerating and aiding and abetting racism in the United States. But we should take it to the next level. What about the crimes you actually not only tolerated, but you helped to commission in the Congo? You should pay for that as well. And I think given the young people, even if they don't know history, they know social media skills. So if we put this narrative in a constructive way, I think we can put enough pressure on these corporations that are known to make sure that they make some amends and pay reparations for the victims of the Congo. And this would also do another thing. It will set an example and check some corporate behavior that is still ongoing in Africa. Number one. Number two, it will also gain us broader media attention and media coverage. Because when it comes to how to get attention in the West, you always have to follow the money. Go where the wallet is impacted. And if you do that, the media will come. And in covering that, more people will get to know about the actual crimes that occurred in the Congo. We will no longer be able to pretend that millions of people did not die and continue to die in the Congo. So that is one of my suggestions. Now, in terms of the issues of justice, of course, it was very difficult because, for example, the mapping report covered the period that most of that period was also coinciding with the presidency of Bill Clinton, who was in office from 93, 2001. That's almost the entire period of the mapping report, except for 2 years, 2002 and 2003. And then you have the same Bill Clinton now becoming the press agent and public relations spokesman for both Kagame and Museveni. So it was very difficult. But I think even Bill Clinton at some point started backing off a little, particularly at some point when the Obama administration condemned M23 and announced some limited sanctions, not far enough. But of course, it made it very difficult for Clinton to also pretend that all these crimes had not occurred during his watch. And I say it's important to shame them. And if we go for the corporate jugular, I think we'll be able to accomplish that as well. Brother Mutai made some interesting observations in terms of the justice framework. I think definitely it needs to go after some of the known key perpetrators, particularly leaders who are known and named. They should not just be allowed to walk scot-free with no accountability. Number one. Number two, I think it's very important, as Brother Mutai said, to have some form of reconciliation as well. After, of course, people apologize for the crimes that they committed and acknowledge, because at the end of the day, whether we love it or not, sometimes you have to live in the same communities with people that have committed some of the most horrific crimes under certain conditions. And then if it's well framed, people can also forgive, so long as the issue of impunity is addressed, which is actually one of the things that the mapping report also mentions. It's a long report, and as I said, we can't go through it, but there's one other part that I would like to read one sentence from. The members of the mapping team were able to observe the constant fear on the part of affected populations that history would repeat itself, especially when yesterday's attackers are returning in positions that enable them to commit new crimes with complete impunity. So that is another reason why it is important to have this issue of justice addressed, so that there will be no impunity and these kind of crimes will just not continue. And then another point I'd like to make, that, of course, change in leadership in each of these countries also makes a difference. You know, Kenya, whatever challenges it still faces, is far ahead of many of these countries in terms of issues of accountable government, where there's some level of democratization and accountability. And Kenya has an experience of going through a potential genocide itself, and then stepping away from the brink and allowing some breathing room to create a different space in Kenya. So we can respect that. Obviously, I think it's clear to everybody who is watching us today and everybody participating that until we have change in Uganda, as I said from the beginning, a lot of these crimes were exported, kept migrating from Uganda, first migrated to Rwanda, and then migrated to the Congo, and not surprisingly, migrated to South Sudan. A newly born nation was never given a chance when the dispute erupted between President Salva Kiir and his Vice President Riek Machar, and the regional leaders were trying to mediate. What did Museveni do? He jumped in support of one side, and he loaned his army to Salva Kiir in 2013 in December. And the same type of atrocities. Anybody can go back and look at that. And if they did not tell you that the name of the country, you would think these crimes are being committed either in the Congo or committed in Rwanda or being committed in the northern part of Uganda. And then if you revealed the name, you will find out it is in South Sudan. Then you ask yourself, how can it be that in South Sudan you have people being burnt in their homes, babies having their stomachs slit and then dumped in the rivers, pregnant women being disemboweled and the fetus removed, thrown into the river, people being decapitated, people being massacred with bullets, women having objects introduced into their private parts. And then you look at what is consistent in South Sudan and the other region. You'll find that the army of Uganda is now in South Sudan. So that is why, my dear comrades, I submit that part of the change has to do with having an accountable government in Uganda. Only then can we start undoing some of these ongoing and continuing atrocities. And I would like to add on this point, at one point, Museveni was also threatening Kenya. And the dispute was over the island.
The river and the fish.
Absolutely.
The water.
You know, and imagine. So it's quite possible that the same type of crime would have been exported to Kenya. But I think we covered much territory, and in covering the territories today, the other consistent pattern, apart from Uganda, is of course the multinational corporate aspect. And I think we need to go after that vigorously, and I think that might yield some benefits for the victims in the Congo.
Thank you, Brother Milton. You say that Benedict spoke to your notes. I think everybody's just, almost grabbing notes from each other or taking notes as we go, and we're all taking the same notes. What you just said actually made me change the order of what I was thinking, where I was going to go next. I'm going to go next to Brother Mutai. But before that, I wanted to say that I think you're onto something when you talk about challenging the multinationals. The reason I say that is I'm looking at the results of what's happening now in corporate America in response to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Absolutely.
And I think the rest of us, when we say Black Lives Matter, we mean Black lives, including us, the Africans from the continent, and we need to continue that push, because there's real things. I think the best example I can give, and this is taken also from someone from Friends of the Congo, the fact that there's an entity in the US called the NFL. It's one of the most powerful entities in the country. It's the football league. There's only 30 teams. They're some of the most powerful people in the world. One of the teams had sworn they would never change the racist name for their team. And the owner had sworn that he would never do that. Mm-hmm. And not only have they changed the name, they don't actually have a name.
Absolutely.
And
all it took was a letter from FedEx.
That's right. So when we start impacting, these type of changes and challenging the corporations, which I see across the board in many areas where they're scrambling to actually now recognize, of course, interests are always at first, but there's pressure works, and this kind of work works. And I think you're onto something. That's what I wanted to say. But you also talked about the interconnection in terms of the whole continent and raising the conversation, in terms of governance and other things. And I think Abraham has a lot, to say about this, because I've heard him speak on it. I've seen him speak on it. I've seen him speak on how you connected South Sudan. Basically, what's happening in the Congo is a picture of what's happening on the rest of the continent. And Abraham, I don't want to take too much time without letting you actually speak to that, but continue connecting these dots and why this call for justice for Congo must continue and become a call for justice for all of Africa. Like, starting with the Congo is a good place to start.
Yeah, I'm saying this is a very important, point, place to start in terms of calling for justice across Africa. When we started speaking about issues in, I can say there's something that Milton has said about Kenya in terms of us being a bit ahead, especially compared to our neighbors. Our main problem in Kenya is essentially corruption. That's the main problem we are facing in Kenya. But as far as democracy, institutions, and all that goes, we are somehow, I can say we are somehow over 50% in terms of having strong institutions that can actually deliver on their mandate. But the major challenge that we face as a country here in Kenya is corruption. Talk about Congo. The importance of us having these conversations across Africa is I saw it especially when we were talking about issues in Rwanda and of course issues in Uganda. The two really gave me an idea of how Africa would look like should we have serious conversations across board. The conversations we used to have during when Rugara was actually arrested and Ingabire was arrested and the others, the conversation we started these conversations from Kenya, though the conversations were ongoing, but I can say we gave it fuel and the conversation erupted across Africa. I actually did a lot of...
I can attest to that.
Yeah, exactly. I did a lot of radio interviews from South Africa, Zimbabwe. I did a lot of radio. I even did one from Namibia. So over the same matter, CNN came in and the rest of the world came in. And somehow this actually impacted negatively on the campaign that Paul Kagame was doing. He was using Arsenal and all Arsenal, the club in England, to invite people to Rwanda. So it actually impacted negatively on his, I can say, PR campaign. And he had to cave in and release these people. Though he released them with some conditions here and there, but actually we believe, and even these people, even up to today, they believe it is because of how we were shouting. So you can imagine, these are a few people shouting across Africa about Rugara, Diane, and the rest of the people. And then also there was an issue in Uganda when Bobi Wine was arrested. The people who actually were shouting the most about his release when he was arrested the very first time, the people who shouted the most in Africa were Kenyans. We even held protests in Nairobi over his release. And I know the Ugandans were also shouting, but I'm saying the people shouted the most in terms of outside Uganda were Kenyans. After that, he even came here to Kenya. He met us. We met in Kenya after he was released immediately, and it was a good thing for all of us. So the two instances gave me an idea of how Congo can look like should everybody across Africa talk about Congo. The problem is not actually that, the problem is not even the politicians in Congo. The problem is that nobody's talking about the issues in Congo. And those who are talking about the issues in Congo are few. They're not a big number, they are few. So now try to imagine a scenario whereby we have voices across Africa, not only talking, but making very loud noise about issues in Congo. Let's have Kenyans making noise about Congo. If we had so many Kenyans making noise about Congo, I don't believe our president could have participated in the issues in Congo like he did. And even our opposition leader was in Congo he is the one who procured the deal between Tshisekedi and Kabila, the deal they had immediately after the elections. He's the one who did that. So the issue here is they do these things because back in their country, let me say back in Kenya, for instance, no one is talking about the issues in Congo. But should we have people talking about the issues in Congo, our own president or even our own opposition leader will not actually go to Congo. It could be, the moment he steps in Congo and he comes back, the people would be asking him, why didn't you go and solve the problems that are ongoing there? Why are you going to, why are you going to procure political deals over there? I mean, why are you, are they giving you some minerals? Because we've heard over time that Kabila used to bribe African presidents with minerals. He could give them minerals, and so they give him a free pass on some of the issues happening in Congo. So if we have people in South Africa, people in Zimbabwe, we have people in Nigeria, we have people in Gabon, we have people in as far as even Cameroon, shouting and talking and having this kind of conversations about Congo, the solution could come a bit more quickly compared to when everybody's quiet, or compared to when the people who are talking about these issues are very few. So when people are few, the guys in Congo can go on and do everything there. So Milton has talked about we challenge the multinationals. These are companies that actually care a lot about their reputation. They wouldn't want to be associated with some, funny stuff like rape, like Benedict was talking about. Women have been raped across DR Congo. So if we tie the atrocities that are happening in Congo, we tie those atrocities to all these companies. I even saw one of the companies over there is a company from South Africa, actually mining in Congo. I've seen one company there. I've gone through the list. I tweeted about that list, I think 2018. It's a list of very many companies, around 27 companies. So the question here is, for me, I believe the conversations we should be having, the problem is, there are those problems that are affecting countries across Africa, but we have conversations on small groups. You have a small group in a small group in Kenya having this conversation, a small group in South Africa having these conversations. But if we bring all these voices together, it becomes a huge voice that politicians can no longer ignore. For instance, how many people are talking about the issues in Cameroon? The Amazonians. I mean, people are looking at what they are going through. I mean, one side of a country is terrorizing another side of the country. I mean, literally, people are being killed by one side of the country, and their problem is actually language. And the languages they are fighting along are not even our own languages. It's English and French. So what divides these people is English and French. But one side is terrorizing the other side. So the question is, the ones who feel that we are English-speaking people, others feel like you are the French-speaking people. Those are not even your own indigenous languages, but you're fighting along those lines. But how many people are talking about issues in Cameroon, across Africa? Has any leader in Africa ever, took a platform and mentioned the issues in Cameroon? Nobody talks about Cameroon. I mean, literally, no one talks about Cameroon. But if you speak to activists in Cameroon, they will show you the videos. They'll show you the images. I mean, things that are happening there. Nobody even talks about Central Republic of Africa. I mean, the Central African Republic, nobody even talks about that country. Half of Africans may not even know there's a country by that name, actually. I was even surprised Kenyans don't even know there's a country in Africa by that name, literally. I mean, Africans don't even, differentiate between Democratic Republic of Congo and the Congo. Africans don't even know there are two countries by that name. So essentially, I feel the problem in Africa at the moment is a broader conversation that we need to have. Right. We need to have a scenario whereby we have people invested on issues across Africa, not issues in one country. We need to have more and more people like us who are able to talk about Democratic Republic of Congo. We identify issues in the Central African Republic. We identify issues in Chad. We identify issues across even Gabon. I mean, even Namibia. I mean, we identify all these issues and we are able to converse around them, propose solutions and educate the masses. By the time Kenyans got to understand who Paul Kagame was, people were like, I never came across this even in our curriculum. Kenyans don't know anything about Paul Kagame, even the entire history of Rwanda. No, Kenyans don't know, because in our own curriculum, all the way from lower grade up to the university, Rwanda is only mentioned once. It is mentioned that there was a genocide, and after the genocide, Paul Kagame became the president, and that's it. So who is going to educate Africans about the rest of these issues? Who is going to educate all of us? So how are we going to liberate? How are we going to have the mapping report implemented? Or how are we going to have even some form of justice for the wrongs done to the people of Eastern Congo if the Africans don't know what happened in Eastern Congo? Right. Our media is doing nothing. I mean, literally, the media doesn't educate people what happened in the Eastern Congo. Yes, people may say the report is actually fabricated, but the report was commissioned by the United Nations. It's found in the United Nations website. So the question here is, the real question is not about did these things happen or not. The question is, if they happened, how are we going to get justice? How are we going to move forward? What will happen to Eastern Congo? So Benedict talked about something to do with the greatest resource of Congo is the people. And this is where I look at and I normally say, we are not going to fight for Congo if the people of Congo themselves don't recognize their own scenario they are in. If I were in Congo, I'd be telling my friends in Congo and everybody else that we are in one of the greatest nations in Africa. We are in one of the greatest countries, the wealthiest countries in the world. And what we can do is to unite and exploit these resources as a country. That's what I'll be telling my own people if I were in Congo at the moment, and if I were Congolese to begin with. So the question is really, Benedict said, the question is, how are we going to get the people of Congo unite and put aside their differences? Because partly the reason why Congo is the way it is because these people, some of them don't agree. I mean, literally, you'll find one area doesn't agree with another area, yet they have one country. The moment the Congolese people have understood that the Western and the multinationals are exploiting their differences to take away their resources, they will suddenly wake up. So the question is, how are we going to get the people of Congo themselves support this kind of agitation? Because they have to support it. They cannot do much. They have to support it by all means.
Brother, but I cannot let you, and I'm sorry for that, but I cannot let you say that people of the Congo don't agree with some other part of the Congo and so forth. I think that Congolese people recognize the fact that they are suffering, okay? They are looking for means and their thought, and I think that when we look at what happened during the elections of Tshisekedi, I think that Congolese people showed just very much how much they wanted in the change in the country. Maybe they didn't understood what the challenges were and how, all those people played against them. But they went to vote as a united country and telling the world, all together what they wanted. And we didn't see there that there were shifts between some communities and some others. And I think that we need to look at that, because as long as we are going to talk about Congo and in a certain way abiding by the narrative that is served by the West, on Congo, is not going to help the Congolese. Now, maybe they don't have a clear view maybe of what the challenges are, but I think that all the opposition is very much fabricated, because if it wasn't, of course, we would have seen those opposition, when there were the general elections. But the Congolese people as a whole said something, and they were, of course, not respected. But and I think that if we go on talking about the Congo and talking about those oppositions and ethnicity, I'm sorry, but I think this is a wrong path.
Benedict, I think what this highlights is that the importance of these type of conversations, that we, the Africans, tell our own stories, right? That way, the world has access to the stories that we tell ourselves, because, for those of us who are really close to what's happening in the Congo, we could see in the very last election that, it was fabricated. The results were fabricated. But, if we were just, again, I don't think all that information is out to the world for everybody to know this. And that's why these conversations are important. And so thank you for bringing it back to that. When we look at the politicians, it could look that way, that, oh, there's all this division. But when we really think through it in terms of the people of the Congo have been very adamant. I will give one example, is the attempt to balkanize the Congo, to break the Congo up in parts. It's failed because the Congolese people have stood up against it. And they've done it in unity. So before I go back to Delphine, I did want to hand it back over to Abraham because he was still making a point, but thank you for jumping in. And then after Abraham, we'll go to Delphine and then come back to you, Benedict.
I think I've made my point, but also I want to thank Benedict for that interjection. Is a good one. We've seen, of course, we've seen the rest of the Congolese people, the rest of the people in Congo are quite united, especially on that case of when people wanted to balkanize the country. They stood with it, and we followed very closely the scenario of the elections, the last elections, that what happened. We actually followed very closely, and we followed it here in Kenya quite closely. And I want to agree with him. My point I was making, I just didn't add something else on it, is that I was really talking about the people in leadership and the people who try to balkanize. For instance, when we talk about the guys who wanted to divide the country and break it into several states and all that, are actually the people from Congo. They are people from Congo, not some outsiders. I mean, when you talk about the M23, when we talk about the militia, the people who are participating and working closely with these multinationals, are the people from Congo. They are not people from outside the country. The militias in Congo, the people who have been torturing others and killing people, are actually people from Congo themselves. So I was talking about this small group of people who actually continue to aid the exploitation of the Congo by the multinationals and, of course, by the outside forces like the West and these other people. So those are the exact people I was talking about. But if you look keenly, what Benedita said is quite true. The normal people, the ordinary people on the ground really want change, and they really want a prosperous Congo. So if I can finalize, my point is that I could say
we're losing your audio.
We need to have these conversations. I'm back.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yes, you're back. Go ahead.
It's okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was saying that I want to finalize by saying that for me, I really believe at this very moment is that we need to create an African voice as far as these matters are concerned. And for me, I'm so focused on Central Africa, areas of conflict in South Sudan. I'm talking about Congo. I'm talking about Rwanda. I'm talking about Burundi. I'm talking about Cameroon. I'm talking about Gabon, and those West African countries which still are under dictatorial regimes. So these are some of the things. If we have a united voice that can actually have these conversations across Africa on our platforms, we are on TVs, we are on all these media stations, and I'm telling you, it is going to be easy to have, to force these people to actually take action as far as Congo is concerned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abraham. I will have to say there are groups in the Congo who refer to themselves as a certain ethnicity, for example, when it comes to the conflict in the Congo. And I mean, Congo has hundreds of ethnic groups and no one even hears about them. So I get the point. I get the point, you know, where some people want to distinguish themselves. I find it ridiculous. And sometimes they'll come and say, oh, you're not advocating for our particular community. And the answer is always, when we speak about the atrocities in the Congo, that includes every ethnicity in the Congo, you know. So want to move this forward. We've all talked about, you know, this urge to continue pushing for justice. But again, there's something really important. We're basing this conversation on the UN mapping report, knowing that that's an incomplete report, does not tell the whole story. But the reason why this came about was because witnesses were willing to come forward and talk about, you know, what happened to them. And so just to bring Delphine, bring you back into the conversation, what would you like to see more of the survivors or other survivors, be it Congolese or Rwandan or Angolans or other nationalities that have been affected in the Congo, you know, do?
Thank you, Claude, for another opportunity to talk, and I thank you, everyone, for your input and for, I guess, painting the bigger picture on how all the different countries, you know, countries from the region, the Great Lakes, even internationally, how the situation is interconnected. So thank you so much for all your great talk. Coming back to your question, Claude, I think it's, you know, I probably the list won't be exhaustive, but some of the things that I would like to see people say, or the survivors, is to talk about their history, to talk about what they've been through. Because, for example, if someone can say that this is not real, but, you know, some people are actually have suffered, have survived, others have survived, some have died, some are still even going through the same things. So I would encourage survivors to speak out. And something that Sister Benedict mentioned earlier, you know, most of the time people are talking about resources, about these players, about people, but these are people. We're talking about people. These are people's lives we are talking about, you know, and talking about survivors. They're people who had families, the people who lost their own, people who probably some of them have lost their limbs, some of them who have had traumatizing events, you know, have witnessed atrocities. And these are people who need support and people who need a voice. So yes, you know, there's so many, I guess, factors in the game. However, we are talking about people. Where is the humanity? Where is our compassion? You know, where is our support? Where is our, you know, these are people. Imagine if it was you. Imagine if it was your family. Imagine if it was your sisters, your brothers. You know, so we have to bring it back to, you know, our human values, our human rights, and, you know, actually think about people who have been through, people who have seen these things, people who have, you know, lost. I know some people who have lost their whole families. You know, it will be one single person who survived. Can you imagine that trauma? So, and people who are still going through that. And like Sister Benedict said, people like women, or even men for that matter, who are being raped, like that humanity, that they've lost everything. They've lost their identity. They've lost their lives. Like, even though probably they're physically there, but, you know, can you imagine that disconnection? Yeah. So I would like, I guess, coming back to your question, Claude, I would like to see survivors speaking out, joining hands, like everyone has been talking about, supporting each other instead of blaming each other or sort of saying, oh, you are lying or whatever. You know, we sort of lose focus all the time. or instead of focusing, oh, someone else's job, someone else's role to do something about it. So it's everyone's role to actually speak out and to acknowledge, that's the chapter of your history, as sad as it is, but it's a chapter of your history. You're not going to change it. So you might as well embrace it. So I guess I could go on and go on, but that's what
I wanted to add one more thing, Delphine. So we're talking about survivors, but there's also witnesses, like those who are in audience now hearing these stories may not have lived them, but now they're witnesses. What about them? What about the rest of us?
It's everyone's, the more you know, the more you be asked, the more you should share. And, you have to be witness as well. Like, you have to speak to these things. That's what everyone has been talking about. It's not anyone's, only like one person's job. It's everyone's to speak out. Sometimes you see, I'm not probably going to mention this enough, but because everyone has talked about it. We talk about other things. We talk about things that are happening in America, in whatever, some places we don't even know, but we don't even, some of the survivors or some of, locals, we don't even talk about our own things in our own backyards or things we've seen with our own eyes. So we need to, I guess, take responsibility and, encourage each other. And, if we have that information, share it, So, yeah, I think that will be enough for now. So thank you.
All righty, thank you. Bringing in back Sister Benedict on, there's some recurring questions from the audience about institutions, African institutions. I think what we're all saying here on this panel is we, the people, need to take action versus allowing the institutions to do it. But there is a recurring question about what's the African Union doing? What are the African governments doing? But I wanted to kind of bring it all together in terms of who should take action, because I think we should not look elsewhere, but maybe you can, give your own point of view and how you see us bringing about change.
But I think, like Brother Abraham has said, that ongoing conversation, if Africa as a whole was speaking about Congo, it would never be the same again. Because people are talking about institutions, but let's face it, if we look at most of all African countries, can people say that they really have functioning governments, responsible governments, that will maybe try, to speak up for other countries in Africa? We don't have that. So, I mean, when I look at most of the time, the French, I would say, let's call it that way, the French-speaking part of Africa, most of the people will look, at Nigeria, Ghana, and everybody's saying, oh, it's functioning so well. This is because we have been colonized by the French speaking world. That's why it's not functioning. And as if, colonialism, lacked, a legacy of, people functioning, and it's just, for me, it's just so strange, because what actually colonialism does, it doesn't make people function. But somehow people are saying that way. And today they look, at what is happening in Nigeria, where there is a problem, of killing people, and suddenly it's not functioning anymore. So we cannot, what I want to say by that is that we cannot have fictions about our African governments. We should stop that. I would say a kind of functioning country is not better than a not functioning one, because at the end, people are killed everywhere on that continent. And if it was functioning, if the institutions were functioning, it would not happen. People would not go on the street, to, like in Nigeria, say that they don't have to kill people. People wouldn't maybe doubt the elections in Ghana. So what I'm saying here is that we don't have those institutions. So people have, to come in. People need to ask everywhere they are, their governments and everybody, to push for that justice and to have that conversation about Congo and to recognize themselves as really, I mean, I think having again that idea that being African really means something, because a part of, having those discourses on Pan-Africanism, but we sometimes I have the feeling that we really don't believe that being African means something. And and maybe because we spoke too much, about development as being what we have to reach in order to be part of that humanity. But we are part of the humanity anyway, and we are part of this humanity as being Africans. And if we look, at each other, we know that we all share that very respect, for human life. And we have that very high respect, of the other. And that's why, in a certain way, also we embrace certain people that we shouldn't embrace and let them come in. So maybe if we go by, reminding that to people, telling them that being African is important, and being African means that as African, you need to care about Congo, you need to care about Uganda, you need to care about Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan also. So starting there. And I think that what Milton has said, which is really right, we need to go for those multinational. We need to tell them, those people have to understand that we know what they do. We know what they do. We know who they are. And they cannot, just fool us, It's not about what they're telling us in book histories that they came, with little necklaces or whatever they gave us and then we gave our people. It's not about this history anymore. It's about really telling them, we know who you are, we know what you do, and we know perfectly the way you are killing us, and we know who you are using to do that, Just tell them we are aware, we know. And I think this will be something that will be quite powerful if Africa had that conversation, because our experiences with those multinational are the same all over the continent. We have people who are just killed. At the end of the day, this is what it means. We are killed because some people want to get some resources. We saw Mali. It's there. So we just have to show people that we share, the same struggles, and that we have to address them. And maybe sometime addressing the struggle means that we need to embrace a cause like the Congo, for instance, but the Congo that is going to speak for all the world, And I think that this is very much what Patrice Lumumba has done when he was speaking. He assumed that Africanness in him. And not only was he speaking from the Congo, but he was speaking for all Africa also. So we have to go back to that. And I like to say that, in very tough time, like it or not, but, history is, holds our back. So we need to go back to that. And we need to use it in a way to really try to make that struggle victorious, and we can do that. And it's not just word, because I'm sure that people are going to say, you know what, it's not concrete enough, But I think that imagining the future is concrete. Those who are not changing the world are those that can't imagine the future. These are the ones who are not changing anything. But so we need to imagine it and try to work in order to bring that to life together so that we can face it together.
So the perpetrator's best friend really is the darkness, and we need to continue to shine light on that darkness. So I want to bring this conversation to to wrap it up. But before we do that, I'd like to give everybody a minute to to give you a closing remarks. I want to start with Brother Abraham, then Delphine and Milton, and finally you, Benedict. Sorry, Benedict and then Milton. Milton, you're going last.
Thank you so much. This conversation has been quite enlightening. I'm so happy for Delphine, and I've seen in the comments on the YouTube channel. I've seen comments there. There are some people saying that we actually need more survivors. People who've been affected by these situations to come out and speak. I think that is really what the Great Lakes region lacks at the moment. It's very difficult. In fact, even the 33 people who were sent by the United Nations to do the mapping report, they actually cited that one as part of the challenges they came across. They could not find people, the victims or survivors, who can speak openly without fear. So I want to use my 1 minute to congratulate Delphine and also say that if you're watching from the Great Lakes region, we're talking about Rwanda, Congo, all those areas, and you've been a victim, you're a survivor. Like actually, Cloud is I know is a survivor, and we need the victims and survivors to actually be the greatest voices. You are the people to speak out the loudest because you've lived these situations. You know exactly what happened to you, and we want to use your voices. We want to use your voices to advance this cause. So I want to finish by saying that I'm so happy to have participated in this conversation. I'm extremely happy, and what I would really love is to have a broader based conversation on the issues in Africa. And there are so many areas. I normally speak with so many people. I speak with my friends in Cameroon. These people are suffering. I speak with my friends in Togo. Actually, I speak with my friends in Togo. They are suffering. I mean, I speak with some of my friends. We've come to know each other through the internet in South Sudan. They are suffering. I mean, so many people are suffering in Africa. And what Africa lacks at the moment is a unified, broader-based conversation. I mean, a conversation that doesn't have to be stopped by the borders. That's not to be like, because I'm a Kenyan, I cannot talk about issues in Congo. I'm an African, and I'm in the continent of Africa. So I want to be able to speak about the issues in Cameroon, the issues in Congo. I want to be agitated. I want to be angry. I want to be annoyed by what's happening in Congo. And therefore, I could really love to have more African people, the young people, the old, women, children. I want to have people who are so angry at the issues that are happening in Cameroon, issues that are happening in Central Republic of Africa. I mean, we want to be, we want to talk about every other part of this continent as if we are part of that continent. Actually, we are part of that continent. So the issue here is we need to be able to identify with the issues that are happening within the continent, be it in South Africa, be it in Malawi. We just need to be able to identify with these issues. So I would want to leave you guys with one message that let's try and see in the future conversations how we can unite beyond our own countries, beyond Congo, and have a broader based kind of a conversation where we bring on board all these issues in South Sudan, all the issues in Uganda, and all these other countries. Otherwise, thank you so much, and I'm so grateful to have met all of you in this group. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Abraham, for the word. And I know I was going next. So I'm so grateful as well to, I guess, have been here with you guys and to have shared my history. And this is obviously, it's like a tiny part of it. And I guess to come back to you, Abraham, it's been a long journey from survivors, or I guess from Rwandese, to start talking. But we've started talking about it, even though for now it's still mostly in Kinyarwanda, but hopefully we'll expand into other languages. But it's been a long journey, because the system, or because people are so afraid of talking, and we can only talk when you feel, relatively safe in a way. So it's a long journey, and that's why not so many people come out to speak out, which I don't think is fair, because this is part of our history. Imagine, having you've lost your people and everything. Sometimes your children will ask you, where's your family member, what happened to this, you won't be able to tell. So it's a challenge, but hopefully one day we'll be able to speak out in a bigger number, because there are a lot of survivors, but the journey in terms of talking is still long. Anyway, hopefully we'll get there. So thank you again, Claude, for having me as part of this panel. It's been a privilege to have this exchange. It's been really enriching, so much information, and also just to have this platform to be able to tell our audience and people who are following us, and also your souls, these discussions, they have to expand, like Brother Abraham said. So I'm grateful to have been part of this journey. And let's keep talking. Let's keep, giving a voice to the voiceless, putting ourselves in people who are suffering, people who have suffered, people are still suffering in their shoes. What if it was you? What if it was your brother, your sister? What would you do? Would you keep quiet? Because most of the time we see people coming out and talking only when they have been directly affected. So let's not wait for that. Let's speak for everyone. And let's, think about other people. Let's bring our human, values. Let's be sensitive. Let's just talk. Let's help each other, because, today may be me, tomorrow might be you or someone else. So yeah, I'm so grateful to have been part of this panel. Thank you very much, Claude, for having me. And thanks to the audience too, who have been following us, and for the messages and the feedback. Thank you.
Ask you to bring the humanity and the human face right back to it. Thank you for that. And just moving on to Sister Benedict to get into your remarks.
Yes, once again, of course, thank you very much, Claude, for having organized this meeting, which was really interesting. And I have to say that as a Congolese, I feel happy to see, my neighbors and my other neighbors, maybe a little bit from another place a little bit far, like Kenya, being here, because there is something when when you are Congolese and you speak, about your country, is that a lot of time you feel lonely. You feel not heard by the rest of Africa, because it's like we are foolish people. We don't really understand, how the world is functioning, and because also there was, of course, that propaganda by Uganda in particular, saying that we are like BMVs, beer, women, and music. That we were just that as Congolese, and when you speak about what is happening in your country, sometimes you don't feel understood. But I think that what is encouraging is that at a certain point, when we, put aside all that noise and all those things, what we see is that there is something that we have maybe in common in that, Great Lakes region, is that we share that suffering. But that suffering can be also our biggest unity, because going from there, we can share that experience, and from there, build something new, because we know where we come from. We know that place of suffering, and that's why it's important to listen to Delphine, to listen to others of my Congolese friends, and when I listen to them, to what happened to them, I am happy to say that I can connect because if they don't have maybe sometimes enough strength to do that, I can maybe try to speak for them. I will never be them. I have my own sufferings about the Congo and a history of loss and everything, but I think it's important that we tell each other all those things, because this is where it starts. It starts with the fact of us not feeling at ease first with what is happening in our countries, and then being very angry with that, and also starting after that to speak out. But to speak out, I think it's a responsibility also. We have to speak correctly, which means that we need to be educated in our tragedy, in order to try to convey the good message, because it's not enough to feel sorry or not at ease or even angry. Putting that word out there is a responsibility, and we need to really assume that responsibility and tell it how it is, and not faking it, and not trying to sometimes just make people happy. We are not going to make people happy, because we need the truth sometimes is disturbing, and we need to accept the fact that it is disturbing. So what I would say is that this is our major, I think, challenge for the future, is having that responsible word out there, and also not forgetting our humanness, and the fact that we need to listen to the other, to each other, and sometimes take that step forward for the one that can't do it. I think it's really important we have that, and we need to have that conversation, and we need to make Africa speak for our community, which is Africa, not just the Great Lakes region, but for Africa as a community, as people belonging to the same continent, but the same earth, I want to say. So this is, for me, something which is important. And I think we started here, and I would like to thank you, Claude, so much for that. And again, for inviting me in, and I really very much appreciate that. And of course, I would like to hear from you guys, in other conversations, and maybe we can bring other people, into, maybe from Sudan, because we've been speaking about too. So this is, thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for all the inputs. And I have things to think about, which is great. Thank you.
We are definitely going to tour the world with this. We're going to continue, raising the awareness all over the African continent, but also all over the world. So this is not a one-time conversation, and I don't want to take credit for all of this, because we have organizations that are a part of sponsoring this. Multiple platforms. Friends of the Congo, Aglan, HMG. The channel that's airing this on, even on local affiliates in various places. So there are a lot of people who are doing all of this work to make it happen, and I'm grateful to them, including Milton's Black Star News, providing a platform for this, and you guys using your social medias to continue to push this conversation. So Milton, let's wrap it up here with your concluding remarks, and then we'll go back to the studio.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to thank HMG for broadcasting this and helping to disseminate. I want to thank African Great Lakes Action Network, Friends of Congo, and you, Brother Claude, for organizing this very critical event. I want to thank Benedict. I want to thank Delphine. Benedict, thank you for the comprehensive knowledge. Thank you, Delphine, for putting a face, behind the pain. I want to thank Brother Mutai for the African perspective, because that's what really is what we've been lacking. And the more Africans become familiar with these things, these atrocities, these tragedies, the more empowered that the victims become, and the more capability we have to impacting some change. And Brother Mutai gave an example of how activism played a role in some of the releases of people that have been incarcerated in Rwanda. It's very important because the world is so interconnected that it's very difficult for people to get away with atrocities if we target them and shame them and expose them in the correct way. When the whole world gets to know about it, it makes it very difficult for them to conduct business as usual and pretend that they're not participating in these crimes. And another example was in Uganda when Bobby Wine was first arrested for the first time. I think activists, not only in Uganda, but in Kenya, played a role in putting pressure on the regime. And we hope that also continues, especially after next Thursday, after the election. There's going to be a lot of need for that, without a doubt. This discussion focused on a slice of the atrocities that were committed in the Congo. And I'm glad all of us made sure that the audience did not get the false impression that the atrocities have stopped or that it only occurred during that particular period of the mapping report. The mapping report was just a microscopic focus on something which is wide and something that is continuing and something that has international players as well, taking advantage of the resources of the Congo. So I'm glad that we spoke about the need to focus on those corporations. And I am very hopeful that if we put a series of events focusing on the corporations, it will definitely yield some benefits. I agree with Brother Mutai that we should focus on all sisters and brothers who are being impacted by atrocities. And he's right. You rarely hear anybody talk about Cameroon, and they're butchering each other over languages that don't even belong to them. And that is one of the tragedies of the colonial legacy in Africa as well. And of course, I think, yes, the African Union is very weak, but I think it's also part of our job and duty to shame them as well, put pressure on them as well. And I've been thinking about this for a long time. I think we should consider every year when the African Union has the annual meeting of all the members, they have the annual meeting. And around the same time, maybe concurrently, we should host our own version of African Union meeting with most of the participants being civil activists, non-governmental players. And that is another way we can put pressure on them too. And if they're not careful, these activists and civil society may end up forming a new African Union, which is much more powerful than the official African Union. So I think that we should make that as one of our missions as well. Talking about things that are shameful that we don't talk about, that Brother Mutai brought up, so I may as well mention it. What about our sisters and brothers who are drowning to cross the Mediterranean? Just think about that. Leaving the most richest continent on earth to die in an attempt to go and wash bathrooms and work in kitchens in Europe. I think that is the harshest, really, condemnation of failure of leadership in African countries. And I think that is something that we might make a focus of a future webinar as well. So I think all in all, this has been a very productive discussion in terms of people who are skeptical about whether the mapping report was correct. I make a few observations. Number one, even the government of Rwanda itself initially did not say this was a fake report. No. What it said was that the report did not put the atrocities in the proper context. That's what it said. So if the government of Rwanda itself is not saying it is fake, then who else should say it's fake? The government of Rwanda said that it did not take the role that the UN itself failed to police these refugees. And that is why Rwanda had to take unilateral action. So it's an admission that the atrocities, in fact, did occur, number one. Number two, let's not forget that the International Court of Justice, as Benedict observed, awarded Congo $6 to $10 billion compensation, which is not, a dime has not yet been paid, by the way, which means the people of the Congolese, people of Congo can actually try to get this judgment enforced. In fact, with interest, that judgment could be more than $20 billion by now, because it was made in 2005. So I think that's something that really needs to be explored. Uganda, and I hate to say this, as a Uganda has assets all over the world. It owns buildings, embassies all over the world. Congo can easily put liens on Uganda's resources. And I don't say this as a person who's against my own country. I say this as a person who's saying the Congolese actually have the power to make the Ugandan regime, to discipline it, to put it on a leash, just by exercising that lien option on money that has already been awarded on the Congo. And that money was awarded not based on the mapping report. There was a trial at the International Court of Justice. So the Congo had lawyers on one side, Uganda had lawyers, Rwanda had lawyers. They went through the case, they went through the evidence, and they ended up awarding this substantial amount. So that again suggests that the mapping report was not fake. And then one final point to show you that that report was not fake. And this is there's a story in the Wall Street Journal that many people are not familiar with and did not get enough play. And I suggest people go back and read it. It was published on June the 8th, 2006 in the Wall Street Journal. I don't remember the headline of the story, but you can research it and find it. And that article said that after Congo was awarded the $6 to $10 billion, the International Criminal Court, which of course is different from the International Court of Justice, started its own investigation into the alleged crimes committed by Uganda in the Congo. And that the president of Uganda himself, the dictator, Museveni, picked up the phone and called Kofi Annan, the Secretary General of the UN at that time, and asked him to suppress that investigation. So imagine, if Museveni suddenly did not think it was fake, if he's asking Kofi Annan to block the investigation. And according to the article in the Wall Street Journal, Kofi Annan told him he did not have the power, which of course raises the next question. Somebody who had the power actually suppressed that investigation. Otherwise, Museveni, just as in Bashir in Sudan, would have also been indicted using the same evidence which had led to the award of the $10 billion. He would have been criminally indicted. That is an issue that should also be explored in the future. So I thank you for putting this event together. I thank you for allowing me to interact with people whom I knew of, but now I was able to participate directly with them in a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you all. I usually have a lot to say, but I'm just a moderator, so I'm not going to say a lot. But I like the focus on the multinationals, and I think there was a comment in the live saying that we also need to include Region 6, which is the diaspora, the Africans who may not have been born on the continent or have been years and generations outside of the continent, which is definitely the plan. Yes. And it came from, interestingly, it came from Dr. Shamari Harper of Friends of the Congo, Atlanta, which that is actually the chapter that I would like to challenge for us to work with to get this Region 6 going. So I'm throwing out that challenge to you as a part of this series, because we are going to tour, you know, the continent, and we're taking the recommendations from this, not only the continent, but the world with this. And we're going to continue to push for these recommendations and for justice for Congo. And so as I wrap this up, before I thank you guys on the panel, what you are saying is true. And anybody that's out there denying what happened it's always interesting when people come to deny crimes, even the criminals do not deny I think Milton, you remember a few years ago, we were on a panel and somebody was denying these crimes. And I said, and I gave him a speech from Paul Kagame, who said on April 10th, 2010, he said, we went into the Congo, we shot the people we wanted to shoot, and we brought back the ones we wanted to bring.
Right.
And so he made this speech, April 13th, 2010. And I asked the guy, if the criminal is raising their hand saying, hey, here I am, I did it. And, you turn around and tell us that it didn't happen. I think it's ridiculous. And that's why I'm grateful for every one of you for being a witness, and especially Delphine for your survival story, which continues to be the light that the rest of us, can follow to make sure that these things are known and that the world is aware, and that we continue to push for justice for Congo. And with that, I want to thank every single one of you on the panel: Abraham Mutai, Milton Alimari, Benedict Kumbinjoko, Delphine Yandamuto, and the audience. I want to thank you guys. Thank you all for participating, for your questions, for your comments, for engaging. I want to thank the sponsors of this event, the African Great Lakes Action Network, Friends of the Congo, HMG, and we would like to see more of you come forward and sponsor some of these events. Want to remind you the hashtags for today: Justice for Congo and Lumumba Day. Lumumba Day is, we're pushing for the declaration of International Lumumba Day on January 17th, worldwide. Thank you all, and I would like to turn this over to the studio. Thank you so much, HMG, for the platform and for all the years of work that you've provided and resources that you provided to this cause.
Claude, thank you so much for such an amazing conversation. I was talking throughout the whole conversation, and it just reminded me of something that I would like to bring all of your audience to your attention. I'm not sure if most of you, or even all of you, have heard of the Jewish Holocaust, the genocide against the Jewish families in Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, from 1941 all the way to 1945, it is recorded that around 6 million lives of the Jewish people were exterminated. 6 million of Jewish people were exterminated. Now, here we are talking about the Congo, and some people have the audacity to say that Congolese were never killed, that it is not true. It goes to the extent that some of the officials, very known officials, get to say, where are the bodies from these Congolese people whom you are claiming that they were killed, they were dead? And let me put some figures also on the Congolese context. If we remember, some of you do not remember, but we also do know that from 1996 all the way to 2004, it has been recorded that at least 5 million Congolese families were exterminated. The language is being played around to the extent that they even refuse to acknowledge that those people were exterminated. There are so many witnesses, there are so many families who are today saying, reporting, accusing, showing all the evidences that their own very families were exterminated. But because of so many interests all over the world, we're having trouble to accept the fact that a life has been lost. I want to go further. Just 4 years in 2009, from 5 million Congolese families, it went all the way up to how many millions? 9 millions. We're only talking about 2009. We're talking about individuals, not necessarily our families. A collection of Congolese people, of which includes families. I want to make sure that I'm not misquoted. Now, that was back in 2009. Today, we just started 2021. I want to ask all of you, all over the world, who cares enough to say how many Congolese lives have been lost thus far. We are so busy talking about all lives matters, Black lives matters, Jewish lives mattered, still matters. How is it that we cannot acknowledge another life? Is it because it's African? Is it because it's a Congolese? Is it because they are poor? Or we just don't want to have any more hands in what's happening there? Or is it because of the interest? Special interest, I should say, specifically. Ladies and gentlemen, now I want to call out Africans in particular. Sons and daughters of Africa, sons and daughters of Democratic Republic of the Congo, Rwandese people, Ugandans, Burundians, Angolians, Central Africans, all these countries surrounding Congo, all Africa, even the whole entire world. It is up to us today to speak of our own stories, to acknowledge our brothers and sisters are being exterminated day in and day out. It hasn't stopped as we speak, as we're having this conversation in 2021. And it is one of the reasons why HMG Studio, we are going to be having a series of these broadcasts throughout this whole year, all over Africa, and if necessary, all over the world, just to raise a little bit of an awareness of what's happening. If other televisions or other medias are not willing to speak of our own stories, guys, come to HMG Network. We also do have huge affiliations with so many other networks. We want to speak of our own story. We don't want other people to speak our own stories, to drive the narrative based on the way they want it presented. We want to say enough is enough to this special interest when it comes to killings, when it comes to exterminating Congolese lives, Congolese people, African people. Enough is enough, ladies and gentlemen. Enough is enough. There's so much to say, but our beautiful audience, our beautiful panelists, they have said so much. But I just want to be really appreciative of each and every one of you who are following this broadcast. Please share. Please share everywhere you are. We want to be able to do this broadcast in your own very language. We want to make sure that the awareness is there. We want to make sure that the Congolese families, Congolese people don't feel alone. Benedict, when she says that sometimes we feel lonely, speaking of our own truth, it hurt me so much. She's been speaking for so many years, just like so many other Congolese people. But how many of us Africans in particular care enough to say what's happening in the Congo? Why is it happening? How many leaders, African leaders, literally care enough to say, let us actually stop these atrocities because we have a hand in it? Ladies and gentlemen, let us work together, not just as sons and daughters of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Let us work together as the sons of Africa, sons of this entire world, and end these atrocities. Today, when you talk about Jewish genocide, Jewish Holocaust, everybody knows what that is. Even for those of you who do not know what it is, you cannot dispute the fact that Jewish lives were exterminated. How is it that you have the audacity today to say that Congolese families, Congolese people did not perish, were not exterminated? Let's check ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. On that note, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. It is quite a pleasure and a humbling experience to be sitting in front of you right now, to be able to have the opportunity to host. We have so many more conversation coming. And when I promise you guys, we are coming all over Africa. We are coming all over the world until everyone understands, everyone know the lives are perishing every single day. We are not going to stop. And I want to call all of you, Africans all over the world, please do your work, do your part to bring the light to what's happening right now, not just in the Congo, but also the rest of the world. Enough is enough with the death. that we continue to witness day in and out. Enough is enough. And with that in mind, I just want to say thank you so much again. I am Freeman with HMG Network. Until next time, I want to bid all of you farewell, and thank you so much, Claude, and everybody who has been doing so much work when it comes to bringing in the awareness of what's happening to the Congo people. I say thank you enough, guys, but thank you kindly for what's happening right now. And last but not least, I'm just beyond grateful that we're having this conversation at the beginning of the year. Really are grateful. So with that in mind, guys, thank you so much. You have yourself a great weekend. Until we see you next time in another amazing broadcast like this one. So long. Yes.
Your spirit may fly away, and your body may be broken. Your lips, they may not speak, for some things cannot be spoken. But time will not forget about the price you had to pay for the greed of men who did not respect the woman, the Congolese woman, oh, the woman. They hurt your body and your mind, and they take away your land. They take away your jobs, put guns in your enemies' hands. How many more must die before the whole world pays for the telling of the lies, the killings and the rape of the woman, the Congolese woman? You dry your eyes and you keep it going. Pull yourself up with your own strong hand, strong and ever reaching for the sky. That is a woman. Your spirit may fly away, and your body may be broken. Your lips, they may not speak, for some things cannot be spoken. But time will not forget about the price you had to pay for the greed of men who did not respect the woman, oh, the Congolese woman, the woman.